Ryan Smith. First time live, huh? Are we rolling? Can you see me, folks? I can't see myself. I better turn my... Oh, I can hear the music. Oh, there I am. Ha! What a country. Jonathan is here running it all by himself today. I didn't know that you had me doing all that stuff. We got... Jonathan's trying to make me look really, really bad. So, happy May 21st, 20th. 20th, yeah. Hey, did you know that Nevada draw results came out today? Did you know that tomorrow Wyoming draw results come out? Hopefully you're going elk hunting this year when all these draws are done, because after, let's see, the deadline for Oregon was last week, the 15th. So the only thing left is Idaho, June 5th. If you want to go elk hunting, June 5th is it in Idaho. And after that, then you're going to be down to just the over-the-counter or leftover and return tags. And we'll do a whole episode on that. But there we'll be talking about Idaho, Colorado, Oregon, Utah, and possibly Montana. But right now, this is Elk Talk Live, episode number 88. Thanks for being here. Brought to you by OnX. Go to onxmaps.com. Use promo code RANDY. Save 20% on all their app products. Also brought to you by the great folks at Loophole. You like my Loophole hat? My wife made this for me. I think it's kind of cool. If I was Loophole, I'd start selling these, but they'd probably have to pay my wife a royalty. Gerber gear, go to gerbergear.com. Use promo code RANDY, save 20%. GoHunt.com. Go there and sign up for the Insider. Get $50 of free store credit when you use promo code RANDY. And get your name in the hat for the Wyoming Commissioner's Tag. Yeah, like, here's your voucher. Go convert it to any tag for elk, deer, antelope that you want to hunt in Wyoming. How's that, huh? Oh, I forgot to bring them. Dang it, Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls has a whole bunch of new calls coming out. Go there, use promo code RANDY, save 15%. So, you guys sent a bunch of really cool questions again today. Before we get into elk hunting, I hope you'll indulge me a little bit here, and it has to do with Memorial Day. So, when I was a kid growing up, my dad always took us to the Memorial Day service. So, all the other families, or a lot of the other families, are out fishing for the weekend, doing whatever. And I used to wonder, why would my old man not let us, why wouldn't we go fishing this weekend? Well, as I got older, I realized how important Memorial Day is. And it's probably now the most important holiday that I hold dear between Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, all that. Memorial Day is important to me. So here's what we're doing for Memorial Day. I don't know if people can see my shirt. You can buy our shirts and hats out at shoprandynewberg.com. But that's not what this is about. What this is about is between now and the 29th of May, every time someone places an order on our store, $5 from that order is going to this group that we've picked. And I'm going to match that $5. And the group we've picked is called the TACP. And if you've been in the Air Force, you know that the Tactical Air Control Groups, the JTAC, all that. Well, one of our guys who works here, Dale Evans, spent 10 years in the Air Force, and he was telling me about the TACP Association and how it's a small group. It's there to help these members who didn't get to come home. They paid the final price. And I told Dale, I said, well, we're going to do something for that little group. It's not that well known. We're going to do something. And maybe it's not going to be a big deal. Maybe we're not going to raise that much money. But I hope this Memorial Day, you will remember those people, those who gave it all, those who were close to us. There's likely, if you're like me, I've had friends who they served and they didn't come home. Or maybe it's the many, many more who will never know their names, but they paid that price. And it's because of them that we get to do these wonderful things, the stuff that we love to do. So I just wanted to get that out there. So if you do go and buy anything with us between now and the 29th of May, through the 29th of May, we're going to end up throwing $10 in the kitty for this group, the TACP Association. So with that, let's do what we can to answer some questions. You guys have been doing, you've made our job so much easier when it comes to doing Elk Talk Live because of all the great questions that you provide well beforehand. And so we start developing a theme of what are we going to talk about and what are the general questions? Do they kind of go a certain direction? How do we make that a big part of the substance of the evening? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to pull up some of these questions that were on our Facebook and Instagram from earlier today. And Josh asks, when you're hunting a large area of public land, so a lot of the questions today have to do with glassing and finding elk. When you're glassing a huge area of public land, can you use high-powered binos, or do you really need a spotter? Well, high-powered binos, when I say high-powered binos, I'm talking 15 power or higher. Like Leupold makes a 15 by 56. I use them a lot of the time when I'm out there glassing far away. But they're not the kind of binos you're going to put in your harness and you're going to walk away or walk around with all day. They're just too heavy. And I can say that for any company that makes 15 power binos. So I usually carry my 8 or 10 powers that I'm going to just have in my bino harness, and I have a spotter. Because if you are sitting here and there's something over there 2 miles away, your 10 power binos aren't going to cut it. You want that spotting scope where you can really dial it up, get it on that tripod, zoom in there, focus it, and you'll know what you're looking at. Just for me, in the late seasons of post-rut and late season, so that's usually like anytime after October 15th, I'm going out there. I'm going to have a spotter with me. Now in archery season, I don't even carry a spotter with me in archery season because I'm moving so much and I'm listening. I'm calling, I'm listening. So a lot of people ask me, well, I go archery hunting, I don't see the need for a spotter. Well, I don't either. So don't worry about it. But if you're hunting these late seasons or post-rut seasons, think about having a spotter if you can. First and foremost, get a pair of quality binoculars, then invest in a good spotting scope. So let's see what our next one is. Michael asks, well, first off, we got to know, did any of the crew draw something in Nevada? Marcus didn't draw. Matthew didn't draw. Larry didn't draw. I drew my 5th choice archery, which I know every year I got a really good chance in my 5th choice archery deer tag because usually there's leftover tags. So it's not like we drew anything that's going to get the folks real excited. So where's this other one? There's another really good one here about spotting. Where is it? Well, I'll find it. I'm just going to go through some of these as we go. Oh, and also kind of connecting to the Memorial Day thing, just service. Aaron Harris sent in a question, and he's a soldier, and he asked this question. Hey, I drew a New Mexico November muzzleloader tag. My father-in-law lives there. He drew the same tag. What can I do from Nebraska, where I'm at currently, to prepare for this November hunt? Well, remember, a November hunt is a late season hunt. So the bulls are going to be in bachelor groups. They're going to be focused on sanctuary. And you said what unit it is, but I'm not going to tell the audience because it's a really good unit. And you're going to find some quality bulls in these tough spots. Look in canyons, look in places far from roads, and you're going to find them in groups. And they're going to be there to get away from the people. And just be thinking about looking at your maps. Where's the place an elk would go that a hunter wouldn't want to go? So, and most of all, thanks for your service. Appreciate it. Let's see. Grab a couple off the feed here. You guys are really posting a lot of good questions today. What would you rather hunt and what is more difficult? Rut season for elk in September or the late season in early November? Well, depends on if I wanted to have fun or if I wanted to fill a tag. For me, if it was all about just having fun and the excitement of that big bull screaming in my face and chasing him and talking to him, no doubt, I'm going in September. But if I want to fill a tag and I want to put meat in my freezer, November. You give me a November tag, I'm going to fill that way more often than I'm going to fill a September archery tag. So, that one we already answered last week. This one we get all the time, and I should almost make it the standard answer. And I think a lot of people who ask this question are people who whitetail hunt and do a lot of tree stand hunting. And it always has to do with scent control. And how long does your scent stay in the area that you have been? And so it's not specifically scent control like you think about, spraying stuff down or whatever. And does that affect elk if they come into an area later, or do they avoid all areas where you've been previously? I don't know the absolute answer to that, but I've observed elk walking along, and I'd seen where a hunter went through maybe 2 hours earlier, and the elk get in that scent corridor where it might be, and they just stop. So I've seen that happen a couple times where it's like that 2 to 3 hour window. And I suppose it depends on, did the person sit down and stay in the area, or did they just cruise through, or what the deal is? I don't really know the answer to that, but I've often wondered it myself as I've watched elk respond to human scent where a human has went through. And I don't know if it's a function of temperature, of moisture, of humidity, of wind direction. I don't know what causes it, or what are the variables. But it's really an interesting question to ponder for me. I wish I knew, because it would change my approach of how I move through areas. Because sometimes the wind is changing, right? Like the thermals in the morning. Heavy air is going down, all right? In the late morning, it starts changing, and by afternoon, the warm air is going back up. Well, if you're traversing that hillside, how long is your scent lingering there? I don't know that question. And because I don't know that question, when I'm going in on an elk, I'm really paying good attention to, all right, what am I going to do if the wind changes? Or how is that going to affect how this elk is going to come towards me? Or if it's rifle season, all right, is that elk feeding? Is it going to bed? What is it going to do? How do I take into account those thermals and what that issue is of how long my, scent molecules, if you want to call them that, how long they'll stay in the air? I wish I knew. Oh, here's one, and I answer this quite a bit, and it has to do with glassing. Peyton asks, do you have any tips for glassing for elk in heavily timbered areas aside from the right equipment? I don't. The only thing I can tell you is find steep faces, because you can glass into a face. The steeper the face, the better you can glass into it if there's a lot of timber. But I avoid those heavy timber areas because there are elk in there, but the elk densities are super low. There's no food there for them. There's just not the right conditions, even though sometimes they will use that as sanctuary, but they're not going to use it for very long, and it's not consistently predictable sanctuary areas because they're usually 10 square miles of dark timber. Well, which of those 10 square miles holds the 20 elk that are in there? So I don't really know a trick for glassing in thick timber other than get on an opposite face of another steep face, because you can look into steep face or thick timbered faces if it's really steep. So, oh, Darren, this is always a bummer. You've seen the episode with our old friend Ole Olson. You say, how is Ole? He reminds me of my uncle. I really love that episode. We lost Ole 2 years ago due to Alzheimer's. So what you saw in that episode was his last big game hunt. He's a great guy. A bunch of grizzly bear questions also this week. It's One of the questions came on Facebook earlier. I may as well grab that one while it's here. Where is it? About food storage and storage of your food. Patrick asks, for those who are new to hunting in grizzly country, what is the most effective way to hang quarters? How high, what type of cord, what knots, etc.? It doesn't really matter the knots, but you're going to want a thick cord because an elk quarter, bone in, weighs a lot. And you have to hang it really high. Go to the U.S. Forest Service website. They usually have, I think it's called Bear Aware. And in a lot of places you hunt in the West, you'll see these signs that say, bears present, food storage requirements in place. In other words, your food and your any game meat that you take have to be stored appropriately. Now, it has to be X number of feet from the trunk of the tree, and it has to be X number of feet off the ground. And I should remember what those numbers are. I think it's 10 feet from the trunk, and I think it's got to be 20 feet off the ground, if I remember right. Well, that's pretty high up there. You're going to have to find a really, really good limb. Now, if you are lucky and you harvest something in grizzly country, there's other things you want to think of. Don't come and hang that meat near your camp, because the last place you want that grizzly to come is near your camp. On our YouTube channel, our buddy Bo was in Wyoming last year. He shot a bull, and there were grizzlies everywhere. And he does a really good job of showing that he went about 300 yards away from his camp, hauled the meat with his llamas, found the only real tree he could hang anything with, or hang anything in, and he hung it as high as he could. But it wasn't that big of a tree. But it was he made do with the absolute best that was available. So understand that you don't want it near your camp, and always put it somewhere downwind, because what does a grizzly do? He comes from downwind when he smells that meat. And if you got your camp downwind of where the meat is, he's going to come walking right through your camp as he's heading to the game meat. So grizzlies are just a factor in Montana, Wyoming, and to some degree in Idaho. And the question I always get, or not always get, often get is, Randy, I'm coming to Montana or wherever it is. Where should I go? My very first question in Montana and Wyoming, my first answer is another question of how comfortable are you hunting in grizzly bear country? And there's nothing wrong with saying I'm unnerved about camping overnight in grizzly country or having a dead animal on the ground in grizzly country. If that unnerves you, just accept that and go hunt in the places that are not grizzly country, because you're here to have fun. And if you're always on edge and nervous, that's not going to be any fun. So the good part of it is that the best elk hunting is in grizzly country. You know, I don't care any place I go in Montana or Wyoming, the best elk hunting is where the highest densities of grizzly bears are. So let's see, some other people have chimed in here, and so if you read the threads here on the live stream, there's some good comments here where some people have chimed in with their thoughts of what they do with hunting in grizzly country and how they store the meat. How many grizzlies have I come across while hunting? How many have I come across? A lot. How many would I say are close encounters? Because a lot of them you see from far away. You know, you're on this hillside and you see them on that other ridge. Like, there's one time I remember just south of town here, we went up black bear hunting this time of year, and we saw a black bear way over there. But between us and that black bear were two really, really big old grizzly boars. And they were just digging, looking for roots or gophers or whatever. And I look at my buddy Matt, and we both decided that it's late in the day. We don't really need to go after that black bear over there. It would have just been inviting trouble. Twice I've been archery elk hunting, and I've encountered grizzly bears at very close range. One I was calling, and so there's this hill, like the trail comes up this little knoll, and I look up here and there's a herd of elk, and they're looking down, And it's all cows, so I'm thinking, oh, there must be a bull down there. So I'm cow calling, I'm just laying on it like, come on, there's a bull in front of me, I want him to come up over that little lip. Well, pretty soon, the herd of elk up on the hill take off running. I'm like, dang, either I really suck at calling or they smelled me. So I start walking up the trail, and little do I know, this great big grizzly bear is coming towards me because he's heard me cow calling. And we get to the crown of the little roll there, and from about 15 yards away, he picks his head up and he sees me about the same time I see him. And it happens so fast, you don't even have time to think about it other than you realize that is a big grizzly bear. Fortunately, I'm sure it was a boar because of how big it was, and it had no cubs. It took off down the hill through the brush. It looked like a big moose running through it. I mean, there's trees crashing and limbs shaking, and it put me a little bit on edge. I actually went home. I mean, I was so shook by that because all I could think of is if that would have been a sow with cubs, or that grizzly would have said, I don't really like this guy being here, he would have been on me so fast. I could not believe how quickly he covered that, I don't know, 50 yards before he got to the edge of the timber. So I think about that one a lot. And I took Corey Jacobson in there in 2015, I think it was, or 16. I took him in there archery hunting here in Montana. And every day we were in there, you'll see if you watch the episode, there are fresh grizzly tracks in the mud every day. And I still ask myself, why do I hunt there? Well, because it's usually a consistent place that you're going to run into some elk. But just probably 3 miles from the spot I'm telling you about, I had another encounter. So I've been lucky, knock on wood. It's just part of elk hunting in places where there are grizzlies. I mean, Northwest Wyoming has way higher grizzly bear densities than what we have here in Southwest Montana. And it's just something you got to deal with. Wow, look at all the grizzly questions coming along here now. So Steve asked, Randy, are you nervous when you're hunting in grizzly country? Do you have a plan in your head if things go south with a grizzly? Yeah. Am I nervous? No, because I've studied grizzlies enough, I've watched them enough, I read about them, I talk to biologists. There are some things you can do to mitigate the risks of an encounter. So you need to know at the time of year you're hunting them, where are grizzlies usually at? Well, there's some times of the year in September, late August and September, they're up really high feeding on what's called cutworm moths. And they're up there for a week or two while those moths are hatching, and it's quite crazy. You can go and you can watch some basins and there'll be 4 or 5 grizzlies up there. So stay away from those areas. Go where they aren't, because usually the elk don't want a grizzly encounter either, so a lot of times the elk prefer to not be where the grizzlies are. You know that in berry season, they're going to be on the north and east facing slopes because the berries, that's where the thicker vegetation is, where the berry crops are. It's moist there, so the berries grow better. It's thicker, so there's shade when they go to bed. All right. If I look down in one of those drainages that just looks like a berry patch, I'm like, you know what? I don't really need to go in there today. How about I skirt around this? So for me, a lot of it is thinking through my head, where are grizzlies in general locations at the time of year I'm hunting? Where are the small little areas within the landscape where they might be? Because I think avoidance of an encounter is probably the best way to have a good outcome. Now, what goes through my head? I've told the crew, and you guys will think I'm nuts. I have told the crew that if there's 2 camera guys there and there's a grizzly bear chewing on me, one guy better be filming, because this is going to be our only chance for a viral video. And the other guy better help get that bear off me. I know that sounds stupid, but the plan in my head is I'm always thinking about, all right, how would I deploy my bear spray? I always have, if I'm in grizzly country, I've got my bear spray somewhere handy. And that always brings the comments and questions of, well, why don't you carry a sidearm? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, I am really, really bad at a sidearm. If you've ever seen me shoot a handgun, you would know there's a greater likelihood that I'm going to hurt myself than that bear. And having had 2 really close encounters, I've seen how quickly a bear could be on me. And it's not like you walk through the woods with your bow in one hand and your sidearm on the other. No, you got your sidearm holstered and whatever. And, you know, most of the people I've talked to who've been in bear attacks, when the bear comes at them, they put one of their arms up, usually their strong arm, and the bear bites that. And usually you end up with tendon damage, broken bones, whatever. Well, am I going to be able to operate my sidearm with a mangled shooting hand? So I feel more comfortable with bear spray. Yeah, it's going to be a close encounter. It's probably going to be on top of me, and it's not going to be a good outcome either way. But I feel more comfortable with bear spray than I do with a sidearm. Now, those of you who train and practice with sidearms, I get it why you feel more safe with that, but I don't. So that's just what I have in my head. As you know, sometimes it gets daylight and you look down in the trail and you've been walking over the top of fresh grizzly tracks and you're like, huh, man, this wasn't very smart. So those thoughts start going through your head at that time. But let's see. I like that people are starting to keep things more and more towards elk questions. This is Elk Talk Live. So we're trying to keep everything here related to elk hunting. So if you're asking questions that aren't elk related, I hope you understand. It's not that we don't want to answer them. It's just that people are here to talk about elk. Let's see. Yeah, I bet. Some of you people, I don't know do some of you save these questions for just this episode, these sessions to say, I wonder if Randy will answer this. All right, Tad asked out there. And so here's the other thing. These questions that all of you ask scroll by so fast that I can't get to them all. So Jonathan over here, his job is to copy and paste them and put them in this Word document in front of me. And he tries to pick the ones that are most relevant. So this one's really relevant. Tad Eubanks asks, if you choose to hunt solely with a 7mm08, like you've mentioned you might do this year, what will be your elk bullet of choice? It's right here. It is a Nosler 140 grain E-tip in a 7mm08. That is what, if I end up doing that this year, this is the bullet that's going to be in there. I would shoot at an elk out to 400 yards with this and not worry about it. But those of you who've heard me talk about shooting distances, I want to get to 300 or less. Because one, a lot less can go wrong. Your bullet performance is just going to be that much better. And I enjoy getting closer, not further. Let's see. Any thoughts on an over-the-counter Arizona elk tag? I've never done the over-the-counter in Arizona. I've done the limited entry, which are considered, I think they call them limited opportunity. They're trying to keep elk numbers low in certain spots that compete with agriculture and other stuff. So I've done that. So, Randy, I plan to come home to hunt Montana this year, planning on hunting the Big Hole country with my son. What are your thoughts on the area? Clint, I wish I could give you an answer, but I have never hunted the Big Hole. As weird as that sounds, I've lived in Montana for 30 years and I've never hunted the Big Hole. So I'm sorry about that. I don't have an answer. Let's see. Let's see. What do I think about the depredation elk hunt in Nevada? It's only open to residents, so I don't even look into it. I know, Chris, you've asked that question a couple of weeks now, and I apologize I didn't get to it. But since the Nevada draw results just came out, I thought I'd answer it. But I really don't know because it's only a resident opportunity. So, have I ever considered hunting the elk population in Tennessee? I've considered hunting elk any place they let non-residents apply. Last week on Saturday, Kentucky did a live stream of their draw for their elk. Kentucky's got over 11,000 elk. That's crazy. That's so cool. But I wasn't one of the lucky people who drew. Oh well. But I think it's really cool how now we have elk seasons in Missouri, in Kentucky, in Arkansas, Wisconsin, Michigan. I just think the expansion of elk back to their former habitat is really, really cool. And thanks to all the great volunteers of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation who have made that possible. The whole Kentucky thing was, fortunately, a person who sat on the board of the Elk Foundation also happened to be the director of the Kentucky Wildlife Agency. And I don't think it was by accident that he used his connections and his relationships to convince the legislature that elk would be a good thing in Kentucky. Oh, it turned out to be a smash hit. So cool. This one, there's like 3 questions about this one. I'm going to answer it because it's very similar to the other ones. Would you say that scouting before the rut is a waste due to elk movement, or when would you start scouting for a rut hunt? There's a couple parts to that. Sometimes I'm scouting for a rut hunt the year before. In rifle season, when I'm walking through places, you know how sometimes you're walking these ridges and you're getting to your spot and every 10th tree is rubbed. It's like, this is where they go every fall to do the rutting. Mark that on your map. Yeah, don't overlook that. When you see that stuff in October and November, mark that on your map and be back there in September. Now, if you're saying, well, I'd like to go and scout in July to see what I see. Well, in July, those bulls are way up on the mountain, or they're somewhere far from the cows looking for the best feed. Because in July, bulls are in bachelor groups and they're on a food pattern. Well, they're going to be in a completely different location in most instances. They're going to be somewhere completely different in September because their number one need goes from food in July to breeding in September. Well, they're not going to get much breeding way up on that mountain where you see them in July because there aren't any cows up there. They're going to come down here to where the cows are going to be in September. And the cows are probably going to be moving slightly in response to better forage, better conditions, better water. So if I'm going to go and scout for any hunt, whether it's a rut hunt or whatever, I want my scouting to be as close to the season opener as I can. So a lot of times, if I say, well, I could take 4 days and scout in July, or I could take 3 extra days just before my hunt, I'm taking those 3 extra days just before my hunt, because what you find out at that time, just before your hunt, is the most relevant scouting information you're going to find. You're going to see what the elk are doing right before your season starts. So is it a waste of time? Well, if you go in July, you're going to learn the roads. You're going to get a visual feel for what the terrain looks like, what the vegetation looks like that you just can't quite get off aerial maps. You're going to see what roads and trails are maybe closed. Maybe you'll be able to look around and see how much use these campgrounds get or these camping areas. Maybe you'll be able to identify, all right, I can filter water there. It's July and there's water flowing here, so when I'm here in September, there should still be water there. There is some value of what you're going to find in July compared to when you get there for the rut hunt in September. But so I hope that answers all of the questions that were similar to that same thing. All right, Drew, this one is in all of our videos out there. If you go watch them, we talk about the 5 seasons of elk. It says, in your opinion, I'm glad you asked my opinion because nothing I give is usually fact, it's usually opinion. What would be a bull's primary need in mid-October? Are they in transition at that point? Yes, they are transitioning from the peak rut to the post rut. So you're going to have some of the younger bulls still acting like the rut is on from about October 5th to the 15th. The older bulls start leaving. The younger bulls stay there, and they're hoping that a cow comes into a second estrus cycle or whatever. So in the middle of October, you're going to be in that transition period between peak rut and post rut. But the bulls, the old bulls, that transition starts earlier than it does for the younger bulls. So if you're looking for one of the adult, like the older age class bulls, by mid-October, he's already in his post-rut pattern. If you don't really care what age class you take, go find some of those younger bulls that are still with the cows, acting like the rut is still on. So their need in those two periods goes from breeding in the peak rut to sanctuary in the post rut. So hopefully that helps. Moon phases. Oh boy, we get into moon phases a lot. This is when Corey Jacobson and I have our biggest arguments when we talk about moon phases. I don't think moon phase means diddly squat. I don't care if we're talking whitetails, antelope, mule deer, or elk. Moon phase doesn't mean squat. There, I said it. Think about it. An elk has a certain gestation period. And for their survival of their calf, they need to have this big pulse, this big spike in calves hitting the ground to reduce predation. Because if all those calves hit the ground within, say, a 2-week period, or the majority of them, the predators can only eat so many in a 2-week period. So it increases the likelihood that more of them are going to survive. Well, when you have these flat, like not a big spike in pulse, but more of a flattened calving period, well, then the wolves and bears and everything else starts chewing on them in mid-May till mid-June. Well, they've got a whole month period. They can eat a lot more of them than they can if you have this big pulse of calves in a 10-day or 12-day period. So we back that up based on gestation periods. There is no way that elk can change their estrus cycle just because of how the moon phase falls that day, or that week, or that month. Because if they did, that would push when these calves drop way into June, which is too late. The calves will never recover and gain enough weight to go into winter. Or it would push the calf drop way into early May, which would be way before the prime green up that the cow needs for lactation. So you talk to most scientists and they laugh when hunters bring up the idea that moon phase changes the rut, or that cold weather or some weather event changes when the rut happens. No, what it changes is what we see and hear and observe of the rutting activity during the daylight hours when we are out in the hills. If it's a full moon, I will agree that more rutting happens at night. I've seen, just my anecdotal feeling is, yeah, I've heard a lot more bugling. I've seen a lot more nighttime activity, or heard more nighttime activity and seen lessening of daytime activity. But it's not changing when the rut happens. The rut you can take, you go to any place that you hunt, talk to biologists and say, when's the peak calving period? Roll that back to the number of days of the gestation period for elk, and that is going to be your peak rut period. It's just the way it is. And with what we do, we have to hunt no matter what the season date is. You know, we're going from here to here to here to here to here. We don't look at the calendar and say, hey guys, let's take 7 or 8 days off because the moon cycle, the phase just isn't that good right now. We hunt through all phases of the moon for all species, and we notice no difference, 0 difference in the success rates. The success rates are a function of how wore down and how ineffective we are, not the moon phase. I know some people are going to be like, Newberg, you are such a blowhard, but it's, I'm a pretty big believer of science. Now, Corey is going to call me up tomorrow morning and say, Randy, we've had this discussion before, right? You're wrong, Randy. What do I do with my elk ivories? You know, I got to do something with them. I have this big, it's like a Ziploc bag in a drawer out in my shop, and I pull it out and I'm like, what am I going to do with those someday? I don't know. Someday I think I'm going to put them in. When I was a kid, I had this tumbler that was like a rock polisher. I wonder if you could put ivories in there and shine them all up. And I don't know. Oh, Dave asked a really good question. Dave, I don't know if I want to answer this one because it's really letting the cat out of the bag here. But Dave says, Randy, you've mentioned that you keep a log when you hunt. What types of things do you write down? Do you go back and analyze them after the season is over? Yes, and yes, and yes. The things I mostly write down is weather elements, how many elk or animals, whatever it is, I see that day. Those are probably the two biggest things. The weather conditions. And I try to figure out, all right, is my hunting style and the way I hunt for this species better suited for bad weather or warm weather or whatever? Sometimes I'll make a note of, saw a lot of hunting pressure, saw 5 other hunters, stuff like that. But mostly I make a note of how many animals I see, whether they're bulls or cows. I usually make a note if we've had success or if I mess up a stock or screw something up. What else is in there? That's pretty much it. But I go back and I read those. Those journals right now are on my coffee table back up in the Randy room. I go back and read them a lot. And maybe they don't make any difference. But in my head, I've convinced myself that they make a difference. And I don't know. It's kind of like, why do you have taxidermy? Well, when you look at it, it kind of reminds you of that hunt. Takes your mind back there, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing of when I go read my journals. It takes me back to the hunt. Let's see. You guys are way, way too funny. I'm going to go back to, you got more on the spreadsheet here?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Dean, are you being a smart aleck here? All right. So Dean, go Big Fork Huskies. In your opinion, I like how people understand, this is all opinion. How many points does it take to draw a decent Wyoming elk tag? All right. So Wyoming has this weird system, right? That you can spend an extra $500 to be in the special draw, or you can just go in the regular draw. Same tag, same everything. It's just that in the special draw, you're paying more money for better draw odds. I hate that system, but that's how Wyoming does it. I think if you have 4 points in Wyoming, you can be looking at some hunts that are going to be pretty darn good hunts. There's going to be lots of public land. There's going to be really good bull to cow ratios, and there's going to be good harvest success. Wyoming has really got it figured out in mixing this blend of opportunity and quality. I'd say Wyoming and Arizona are the leaders when it comes to providing a lot of both. And some people will argue with me, oh no, it's better here, it's better there. That's fine. That's my opinion. So, Dean, I think if you have 4 points, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. And, while you're building those points, I always throw your name in the hat because Wyoming gives away 25% of the tags in a random draw. So even if you don't have enough points, you might draw in that random draw as you're building those points. So, let's see. How far away from a water source do I hunt during archery season? I want to make sure that there's a water source within at least 3 or 4 miles of where I'm hunting. But as far as how close to that, whatever that water source is the elk are using, how close am I to that? It depends on what the elk are doing. I mean, elk will move a lot to feed into water. Now, in the rut in September, I love hunting really close to water because here's what happens a lot of time. In the morning, the bull, he's fending off all the other bulls. The cows are thinking, our bellies are full. Let's go up into the shaded hillside and bed. They stop and get a drink of water on the way, and the bull, he's still putting on, he's kind of like a bird dog out there. You walk a mile while pheasant hunting, and your dog has went 7 or 8 miles. Well, that's this bull. He's just circling the herd, fighting, bugling, arguing. By the time he gets up the hill, it's now warm, and he's just completely wore out. he puts the cows to bed, in effect. And about sometime between noon and 2 o'clock, very often that bull will get up completely silent, completely solo, and sneak down to that water hole, water real quick, and get back up to those cows. And that's a really good opportunity to maybe get your chance at that big bull that is so hard to kill once he's got all those cows around him. So, if you find big bulls now in May, would you say that location will hold these big bulls in November since that's after the rut? I'd say very unlikely. Where you're seeing bulls right now in May, it's very unlikely they're going to be there in November. Because where they're at right now, it's all about where's the best food, where's the best food, where's the best food. Well, in November, it's where do I avoid the hunters? And those are usually in 2 different locations. So I wouldn't make my November hunting plans based on what I see in May. Let's see. Man, there is all kinds of good questions this week. This is good stuff, folks. I really appreciate how much thought you guys are putting in these questions. I did not get a New Mexico elk tag. When do I get my refund? You should already have it. They put it back on your credit card. All of mine have been, it's been 2 or 3 weeks since I've done it, or since I got it. Dale Evans. I'm not answering Dale's question. He's setting me up here. But it has to do with grouse. Dale and I are going out. Dale Evans is one of our crew. He's the guy who came up with the idea that sales of our merchandise for the next 10 days, or he's the one who came up with the group, the TACP group, that our merchandise sales are going to $10 per order. But Dale and I, tomorrow morning, are going out. I'm part of you're going to crack up, right, folks? Y'all know how much I love to hunt grouse? Well, there's a grad student here in Montana that's asking for volunteers to do a grouse survey. Ooh, me. So I went out and filmed some of that the other day. And then tomorrow, Dale and I are going out and filming the rest of it. And yeah, I did pick a grouse survey location that also is a little bit of just recon about what's this old burn look like in here, because I might go back in there elk hunting this year. So, but my point of that is there's a lot of places where you can volunteer to do conservation work if you want to, helping grad students. A lot of the conservation groups like the Elk Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, the Wild Sheep Foundation, Pheasants Forever, Wild Turkeys, they have all kinds of local projects, and it's fun to go out and do those kind of things. I've been on sheep captures where you capture them, you test for disease, you collar them. I've been on some of those. I've been on fish spawning where you strip the spawn from the fish for the hatcheries. I've done all kinds of them. You go pull fence or whatever it might be, help with a burn. Those are just fun things to do. If you had a limited entry rifle tag, would you hunt water while hunting in Utah? That depends on if I had the September tag, which is limited entry, or if I had the November tag, which is limited entry. If I had the September tag, yeah, I'd be focused a little bit more on water than I would in November, for sure. All right, we've had multiple questions today about cows. And where do I find cows, and what's the difference between where the cows are going to be and where the bulls are going to be? So Matthew asks, you answered about bulls. What about cows being in similar locations in May versus October? Again, very unlikely they're going to be in the same location, and here's why. Cows are super selective. Okay, if you think about what a cow elk's job is, her job is to carry a fetus until it's born and then lactate and get that calf through the winter when she has another fetus. And it just keeps repeating its cycle. Everything about the life requirements of that cow elk has to do with food. Not just any food, but the best food on the landscape. How do they get the most nutrition at the lowest risk? Lowest risk to predation, lowest risk to hunting, lowest risk to human activity of getting hit by a car or whatever it is. So the absolute premium green up in May usually follows a snow line or follows different moisture patterns, maybe slopes that are slightly different because the sun isn't hitting them as intensely in September, so the vegetation stays green there longer in September, whereas in May, the sun is hitting this slope and it greens up first, or this drainage, or the way this mountain range runs. So very seldom is the absolute best food on the landscape in May going to be the same location that has the best food on the landscape in October. And you have to, I know people got tired of me, and since it's out of print, I've quit talking about it, but the elk book that I always talk about, Elk and Elk Ecology, it's out of print right now. You can't get it. You got to get it on eBay or Craigslist or something. But anyhow, in there is tons and tons of research and study about what elk eat. Elk can find such a wide variety of things to eat, it's incredible. But even though they have this huge variety from pinon to juniper berries to forbs to sage to aspen leaves, I mean, it's crazy what they can eat and make a living on. In spite of that wide variety, they are tuned into, as the best quality food changes and moves across the landscape each day, each week, each month, they're following that across the landscape. And that's where you're going to find the cow elk. Cow elk have one thing in mind from January through December. From September through the end of season in November, it's food and food and food and more food. So where you're seeing cows right now in May, like I'll use in the Rocky Mountains where you have a bit of a migration. The green up line, as we call it. So the snow's melting, and right where the snow is melted through, that first couple hundred yards is the most nutritious vegetation on the mountain at this time of year. Well, once the snow melt is done, you don't have that fresh emerging stuff, so the elk have to disperse and go and find where are the better pieces. And in August, once it turns brown because of all the summer and it kind of cures, comes into September, now they got to be really particular about where they're looking and where they're going to get the best food. It's all about the greatest return on their investment at the lowest risk. I mean, a cow elk should be a portfolio advisor. How do I get the best ROI at the lowest risk? That's what a cow elk really does. So, and that changes across the landscape in huge ways. Let's see. Oh gosh. Someday, you know what we need, Jonathan? We need to, like Dave Letterman used to have the top 10 thing on the Letterman show, or Late Night with Letterman. We need something like that for these questions that you people put out here. This is this is really good stuff. All right. Someone from Wisconsin on Instagram, I say Wisconsin just based on their acronym that they have for a handle here. What is the one element, the one decision, the one tactic that contributes to the difference between a successful kill versus going home with an unpunched tag? The number one thing is to have a plan and stick to that plan. E-scouting and building a plan from e-scouting, a hunting plan of what am I going to do the first day? And by that I mean the first morning and the first afternoon. What am I going to do the second morning and the second afternoon based on what I learned the first day or in my scouting? What are my fallback options? We've done this out on our YouTube channel many times. We've talked about building an e-scouting plan. Having a plan and sticking to it is absolutely essential. And by that I don't mean sticking to, okay, this is my one spot and I'm just going to be here all 5 days of my hunt. No. It means having and developing fallback options for each of the possibilities you might encounter. All right, what if it's a colder than normal season? What if I encounter a bunch of hunting pressure? What if this road is open that I thought was closed? So you're building this plan and you're working that plan. You're not giving up on it. Because we put these plans together and we might go day 1, see nothing. Day 2, see nothing. Day 3, see nothing. Well, back in the day when I first started learning how to elk hunt, if I hadn't seen anything by day 1, I was pretty much giving up. I was like, well, I hope I get lucky. I'm just going to randomly stumble through the woods here. Well, when you have a plan, you keep working it. And in the process of working that plan, you're eliminating more places where elk aren't. So as you get towards the end of your plan, you're getting closer to where they are. And the other thing I'd say while you're in the field, don't give up. Don't get discouraged. It's easy to get discouraged, but when you do get discouraged, don't give up. If you have a good plan that you're confident in, you're going to stick to that plan. A greater likelihood you're going to stick with it and you're not going to give up. And if you don't give up, that's probably, people say, what gives you maybe a higher than average success rate when it comes to elk hunting? I'm so bullheaded, I don't give up. I've been below average at everything in my life. I'm below average at elk hunting, but I don't give up. That's the one thing that has helped me a ton when it comes to elk hunting. Oh, Mr. Drew Wolf asks, how does a guy like myself, who is just getting started with draws, picking units, over-the-counter tag, it seems like all the draws and such are so confusing for me as a Midwest guy where we never have to draw for tags, we just go buy them. Okay, here's a couple places I'd go. I'd go to our YouTube channel. There are video after video that explains every state's draw system. We call them tag application strategies or tag drawing videos. GoHunt.com, who they're one of the sponsors of Elk Talk Live, they ask us to go and produce these videos every year and update them every year so that people know how this works. Exactly the question that Drew is asking. So go to our YouTube channel. You'll see a ton of stuff there. We have a forum called hunttalk.com, and there's one segment of the forum that it's called Tags and Applications. That has hundreds and hundreds of threads, each thread having multiple posts and answers and discussions. That's another great place to just read and absorb. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to seem confusing. If you're committed to coming out and doing this Western hunting, you got to put your time in. You got to learn. You got to get your knowledge level up on point. And then if you're interested, sign up for Go Hunt. They have this thing called the Insider. And Brady and Trail and Brandon and those folks who are writing those strategy articles. I subscribe to everything out there that relates to tags and drawings and how all the states do this. There is no resource out there that goes into as much detail and is as applicable to the self-guided person, the do-it-yourself person, as what you're going to find at Go Hunt. And if you use promo code Randy, they're going to give you $50 of credit in their gear shop, and you're going to be in the drawing for the governor or the commissioner's tag. So it's a very valuable resource. But start out at our YouTube channel or out on our Hunt Talk forum, and you're gonna get a ton of information for free right there. Let's see, a lot of people asking. Oh. Someone says, what's with all the gear giveaway that was announced today? Thanks for reminding me of that. It's written down right here. So today, if you were on our email list, it's been 5 years since we've done a survey of our audience. And if you think about where we were 5 years ago, we were on Sportsman's Channel. We didn't have a podcast. We didn't have a YouTube channel. We didn't have Amazon Prime. We didn't do Elk Talk Live. We did a survey of our audience, and we took that information to heart. And we said, guess what, folks? Our audience is not a TV audience. We better start coming up with better forms of content, new distribution strategies. All of you told us loud and clear at that time, we want more information, more information. Yeah, keep the entertainment and the inspiration stuff, but we want more information. So that's when we did the change of direction in 2015, and we left TV. That within 2 years, we were off TV. Within 1 year, we had a YouTube channel. Within 6 months, we had a podcast. Well, it's been 5 years since we surveyed our audience. So our sponsor said, Randy, if you're going to survey your audience again, we want to give them incentive to go through the surveys. So we've got a pile of gear, $7,000 worth of gear that we're giving away for nothing but answering a survey. So you answer the first survey, and if you answer certain questions we want to know more about, if you say, yeah, I like watching video on YouTube, okay, you might get a follow-up survey that says, hey, if you'll answer the second survey, you're in for even more drawings. Because we're trying to get the absolute finest information we can about what you guys want. What do you want in terms of content? How do you want us to pay for the sponsorship? Because it's not free to produce content. If you guys knew what it costs to run this operation every month, you would realize that, all right, there's got to be some form of sponsorship. Do you want it in overlay ads? Do you want it in pre-roll ads? Do you want it in affiliate links? Whatever. So anyhow, if you want to help us, here's a way you can do it. You would text ELK, E-L-K, to 64600, and right on your phone, you'll get a link that says, here's the survey. You can fill it out, and everyone who fills out the survey is going to be in the drawings for all this gear. It doesn't cost you anything. And I know some people are going to say, I don't want to give my email address. I don't want to give my zip code or whatever, or what state I live in. I get that. If you're not comfortable with it, we don't want you doing anything you're not comfortable with. But if we're going to keep ahead of the game and keep producing relevant content on distribution platforms that you enjoy, that are your preferred media consumption platforms, we need to know what you're thinking. So that is what it says. Survey is closed. What do you mean survey is closed? No, it can't be. So if someone do this right now, text ELK, E-L-K, to the number 64600 and tell me if that's closed. Because what we're doing, we're rolling out our email list. We've got this email list that a lot of you have opted into in the past, where you've said, oh, I want to be in the Win a Hunt with Randy that we do every fall. And when you've done that, you can opt in that I want to be on your email list. I want to get notifications when you have special deals from your sponsors or whatever it might be. So that email list, we've started doing that this morning. So some of you have already got that. And I'd say by Friday morning, the entire email list is going to have rolled through. And then we're going to put the surveys out on Facebook and out on Instagram, on our Hunt Talk forum, our YouTube channel. We're going to put them on all of our platforms. So, all right, Charlie says, I just did that, and I got a response to take the survey. So there you have it. If you're already on our email list, you're going to get it. Or if you want to get on our email list, take this survey, text ELK, ELK, to 64600, and you can opt in to be on our email list. So, some say the link works. Oh, I see. I'm like, what do you mean the survey's closed? And so Wild Hunter says, sarcasm, Randy, I'm trying to discourage everyone else so that I can win the prizes. All right, joke's on me. Whew. This about gave me a heart attack there. And the reason why is this morning we hired this survey company to do it, and they're great folks. Something in their software stripped the link out of one of the answers. And so people were clicking on it like, I want to take the next survey, and it wasn't working. So they're all emailing me, hey, Randy, I'm trying to do the next part of the survey. So that when someone said that, I'm like, oh, no. Oh, tell me, please tell me that's not the case. But anyhow, that's one way you can do it. And like I said, if you follow our other platforms, you're going to see this. And we're running this over probably the next 2 months. Because I can't even explain how invaluable that last survey was. It completely recharted the course of what we were doing in terms of the type of content, which required that if we're going to do that much informational content, but we're also going to have high quality, like really polished Amazon Prime episodes. And we're going to do this many. You told us you want this many hunts a year. I'm like, I better start hiring some people. And so now we've got 8 people who work here. And it's been really cool. Really appreciate it all. All right, people are saying, there's a couple people who say that the text isn't working, but there's lots of you who are saying it is working. So I'm going with the fact that it is working, and maybe there's just some operator error there. So, wow, let's see. How tolerant are elk to smoke? 2 years ago, I was in a canyon and the wildfire smoke was thick. Will that make the elk move? I don't know if it's going to make them move very far. I mean, if it's like so suffocating that you couldn't hardly breathe, they're probably going to be somewhere else also. But smoke out on the landscape is a non-issue to elk. If they got worried about every time they smelled smoke, they'd have to all get on the spaceship and fly away from the West Coast or the western states in August, because it is fire season here in August. Doesn't bother them. Doesn't bother them at all. So, all right. You guys have really, man, I'm really thankful for how much thought all of you put into these questions. It's been super, super helpful. Let's see. Okay, this is a good one. I'm going to try and frame this without it being an argument or a political statement. But Randall Pratt says, Randy, in Montana, do you have a problem with all-terrain vehicles like we have in Utah? I hunt in a wilderness area for elk, and no ATVs are allowed, but increasingly people are going wherever they want. So I'm going to answer that, but before I answer that, I got to just thank all the companies that make this possible, okay? Onyx Maps, GoHunt.com, Leupold.com, Bowtech Archery, Gerber Gear, Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, Tight Spot, Black Gold, Ripcord. It's because of those companies all this stuff is free. So I hope you will grant me the 30 seconds to plug them. But anyhow, back to the point of ATVs. I moved to Montana in 1991. I'd been here, I think, 2 years when Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks started having they have every other year now, their season setting meetings. And they have those in January. So the first one I ever went to was at the Holiday Inn here on North 7th and Bozeman. And all the Fish and Wildlife and Parks people were there. The big game managers, the biologists, everything. And they were talking about this season, that season. And they said, we're trying to get a feel for what Montanans want. And they laid it out like this. They said, and some of you aren't old enough to remember this, but I am, because I was born in 1964. So at the time I was, 29, 30 years old. They said, right now, the amount of ATV activity or motorized activity is going through the roof. And every study shows us that that creates more vulnerability to elk. It impacts their calving. It impacts a whole lot of things. So we want to get a feel from the Montana hunters, what would you like? We have two options. We can let things just go as they are, and we'll see this great big increase in motorized travel. But understand, if we do that, we're going to become like Idaho, possibly Nevada, Arizona, Utah, or not, I shouldn't say Idaho. We're going to be more like Utah, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, where we're going to have to go to limited seasons. We're going to have to shorten your seasons. You're going to have to choose your weapon. There's going to be very few general tags. That's one option, and we can just let it go that direction, but we know enough about the science of elk and motorized behavior and disturbance that's what your future is if you don't want us to help the federal agencies with motorized travel. Or we can work with the federal land management agencies for temporary restrictions, seasonal restrictions, in some case maybe permanent restrictions. But we think if we do that, you'll be able to keep your 6 weeks of general archery followed by 5 weeks of general rifle. We don't think you'll have to choose your weapon. We think that you won't have to have highly restrictive seasons where you can only shoot 5-point bulls or better. And we'll be able to keep most of the state on a general hunting pattern of general units. And so they asked, do you want us to work with the federal agencies to kind of keep a wildlife-friendly pattern of motorized travel, or do you just want it to be all fair game? Well, I think in the couple hundred people who were sitting there, when they said, do you guys want more motorized travel? I only think I saw 2 people raise their hand. And when they said, do you want longer seasons and general seasons and da-da-da, and some travel restrictions, everybody else raised their hand. So here we are almost 30 years later in Montana. And our state agency has worked very closely with the Forest Service and the BLM on their travel management plans. And it's usually just seasonal closures of, okay, September 1st to December 15th, this trail is non-motorized, or this road, we're going to put a gate on it, or whatever. And by most accounts, we probably have the most liberal hunting seasons in the West here in Montana. We still have 6 weeks of archery, followed by 5 weeks of rifle. General, resident, just go buy your tag at the hardware store or the sporting goods store. I've hunted Utah, or that's the state this person refers to. I've hunted some of these states where there is kind of an entitlement of I can drive my ATV anywhere I want. And that's fine. Whatever people as a collective state say that's what we want to do, I'm not here to tell Utah what they should do. I do know there are consequences to whatever that decision is. And it's going to be either restrictive, more restrictive, ultimately all limited entry, short seasons, pick your weapon, or it's going to be more liberal seasons. So we don't have nearly the problem with it here in Montana that you've observed in Utah. I've been on some hunts in Utah, and I've been astounded by how many motorized vehicles are just going across the landscape. I'm like, whoa. But if that's what Utah hunters are in favor of, I live in Montana. It's not my decision to say if that's what Utah guys want, or gals. So that's not a statement about the politics of motorized or non-motorized travel. It's a statement about the facts of how that impacts elk hunting. That is a fact. Every study has shown the same thing. But if people want to have restrictive seasons but be able to drive to the top of the mountain, that's up to the folks in whatever state. Or if they say, you know what, we want a gate down here and we'll walk that road for a mile or two, that's the job, that's the prerogative of another state. So anyhow, that was a really good question. I hope it gives some perspective about what these agencies are tasked with when it comes to trying to figure this out, trying to balance it. Last question, Joseph asks, when are the Randy Newberg Gerber knives going to be released? Had a call with them on Monday, and I think they're still on target for sometime in mid-June. I hope that's the case. This is what they're going to look like. But I think we might get into a whole topic of just knives in general someday. So I'll give you why I think a topic about knives is important. I grew up trapping, okay? You talk to any trapper, they really have strong opinions about knives, how you use them, what type of edges, what type of handles. And the reason being is if you trap, you've got a knife in your hand all night long while you're skinning fur. And you come to learn an awful lot about knife use and blades and handle types and how to use them. And that carries over to in the field when you're processing and taking care of an elk out there on the mountain in the dark. So I've got a lot of strong opinions about how to keep your primary cutting edge sharp, how to take care of your hide so you're less likely to cut a hole in it, how you can do certain things so you get less hair on your meat. I mean, there's all kinds of little things that every trapper would look at and say, well, everybody knows that. Well, no, if you didn't grow up in a trapping family, you don't realize that stuff. So maybe someday we'll have a whole discussion about those kind of things. So anyhow, I think, Jonathan, I think you get an A+ tonight, man. You killed it. There's a dilly bar for him out in the freezer.
Yes.
Did you know that? There are 3 dilly... Oh, did you already rat one out?
I saw them, but I didn't take one.
Yeah. Oh, there better be 3 of them there or somebody's in trouble. 1 for me, 1 for Jonathan, and 1 for me to take home to my wife. Thanks for being here, folks. Have a happy Memorial Day. Remember what Memorial Day is about. No matter where you're at, be thinking about those important people who laid their life on the line for all that we enjoy today. Take care.